The rain hammered against the windows of Mel's diner like bullets, each drop creating rivulets that distorted the neon signs outside. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in Kansas City, and the small 24-hour restaurant was nearly empty, except for a trucker nursing his third cup of coffee and an elderly woman picking at a slice of apple pie. Brielle Montgomery wiped down the same table for the fourth time, her movements automatic after 6 years of working the night shift. At 24, she had the kind of tired eyes that spoke of responsibilities far beyond her age. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her uniform, a faded blue dress with Mel's Diner embroidered on the pocket, had seen better days. She glanced at her phone. 11:48 p.m. 12 minutes until her shift ended. Then she'd drive across town to her second job at the 24-hour grocery store, where she'd stock shelves until 7 a.m. After that, if she was lucky, she'd catch 3 hours of sleep before starting her afternoon shift at the local pharmacy. 3 jobs, 7 days a week, all for one person who meant more to her than anything in the world. The bell above the door chimed, and Brielle looked up to see a tall figure in a dark hoodie step inside, shaking off the rain. He was broad-shouldered, athletic, with the kind of presence that filled a room even when he was trying to be inconspicuous. Water dripped from his hood as he chose a corner booth, the farthest from the other customers. "I'll be right with you," Brielle called out, grabbing a menu and a glass of water. As she approached the table, something about him seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it. Famous faces came through Kansas City all the time, and she'd learned not to stare. "Rough night to be out," he said, setting down the water and menu. "Coffee to start?" He looked up, pulling back his hood slightly. That's when she saw his face clearly, and her breath caught. Travis Kelce. The Travis Kelce, star tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl champion, one of the most recognizable athletes in America. But instead of the typical reaction he probably expected, screaming, phone cameras, demands for selfie, Brielle simply smiled and waited for his order. "Coffee would be great," he said, studying her face. "You're not going to ask for a picture? Post on social media?" Brielle shook her head. Everyone deserves to eat in peace, especially when they're caught in a storm. Something in Travis's expression shifted. Relief, maybe. Gratitude. "Thank you. That's refreshing. What can I get you to eat? The meatloaf's actually decent tonight, and the apple pie is homemade." "Meatloaf sounds perfect." He paused. "I'm Travis, by the way." "Brielle, and I know who you are," she smiled. "My little sister's a huge fan. She knows every stat, every game, every touchdown dance you've ever done." "How old is she?" 16. She's something special." Brielle's voice carried a mixture of pride and worry that Travis picked up on immediately. As she turned to leave, Travis noticed something he'd missed before. Her hands were shaking slightly, and there were dark circles under her eyes that spoke of more than just a long shift. When she returned with his coffee, he decided to take a chance. "Brielle, are you okay? You look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulder." She paused, coffee pot in hand. It had been so long since anyone had asked her that question. Really asked, not just made polite conversation. The kindness in his voice, combined with her exhaustion, made her defenses crumble for just a moment. "It's been a long few weeks," she admitted, then caught herself. "But you don't need to hear about that. I'll get your food." "Wait." Travis's voice was gentle but insistent. "I've got nowhere to be until this storm passes, and sometimes it helps to talk to a stranger." Brielle looked around the diner. The trucker was reading a newspaper, the elderly woman was dozing in her booth, and Mark Stevens, the night manager, was in the back office. She slid into the seat across from Travis, just for a moment. "My sister Zoe has type 1 diabetes," she said quietly. "Diagnosed 3 years ago, right after our parents died in a car accident. I became her guardian, and the insurance," she trailed off, shaking her head. "The insulin alone costs $400 a month, and that's with insurance. Her continuous glucose monitor, the test strips, the doctor visits, it adds up to about $2,800 a month." Travis felt his chest tighten. $2,800 a month? For medication to keep her alive? "The American healthcare system," Brielle said with a bitter laugh. "I work 3 jobs, 80 hours a week, and I'm still always behind. This month's payment is due tomorrow, and I'm $400 short. I've already borrowed from everyone I can think of. What happens if you can't pay?" Brielle's hands clenched on the table. "She goes without. And if she goes without..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Travis stared at this young woman who was sacrificing everything for her sister's survival. In his world of million-dollar contracts and endorsement deals, he sometimes forgot that just miles from the stadium where he played, people were fighting battles like this every single day. "Brielle," he said carefully, "what if I told you that money didn't have to be a problem anymore?" She looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Before Travis could answer, the kitchen bell dinged, and Brielle jumped up. "That's your food. The food can wait," Travis said firmly. "This conversation is more important." But Brielle was already walking away, her professional instincts kicking in. She returned with a plate of meatloaf and mashed potatoes, her walls back up. "Look, Travis, Mr. Kelce, I appreciate you listening, but I can't accept charity. I've made it this far on my own, and I'll figure it out." "This isn't charity," Travis said. "This is one human being helping another. What's the difference?" "The difference is that you don't know me. You don't owe me anything. And accepting money from a stranger, even a famous one, feels wrong." Travis took a bite of his meatloaf, thinking, what if it wasn't money? "What do you mean? What if I helped in a different way? Connected you with resources, medical assistance programs, something that wouldn't feel like charity?" Brielle hesitated. "There are programs, but the waiting lists are months long. Zoe needs her medication now. Then we'll make sure she gets it now and figure out the long-term solution later." Before Brielle could protest again, the door to the back office slammed open, and Mark Stevens emerged, his face flushed with anger. He'd been watching the security cameras and didn't like what he saw. "Montgomery!" he barked. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Brielle stood up quickly. "I was just taking Mr. Kelce's order. You were sitting at a customer's table having a personal conversation instead of working. That's unprofessional behavior." Travis stood as well, his 6'5" frame towering over the manager. "She was providing excellent customer service. I asked her to sit down." Mark's eyes narrowed as he recognized Travis. "Oh, I see what this is. You think because you're some hotshot football player, you can come in here and distract my employees?" "That's not what happened," Brielle started. "And you," Mark pointed at her, "think you can flirt with celebrities to get better tips? Well, let me tell you something, sweetheart. This is a respectable establishment." The accusation hung in the air like a physical blow. Brielle's face went white with humiliation and anger. "I wasn't flirting with anyone," she said, her voice steady despite her obvious distress. "I was doing my job. Your job is to take order and serve food, not to have heart-to-heart conversation with customers." Mark turned to Travis. "Sir, I apologize for my employee's unprofessional behavior. Your meal is on the house." "I don't want it on the house," Travis said coldly. "I want to pay my bill and leave an appropriate tip for excellent service." He reached into his wallet and pulled out a thick wad of cash. Without counting it, he placed it on the table. "Keep the change, Brielle. You've earned it." As Travis headed for the door, Brielle looked down at the money and gasped. There were 30 $100 bills, $3,000. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Travis, wait!" But he was already gone, disappearing into the storm. Mark's eyes went wide when he saw the money. "Holy shit, $3,000? He made a mistake," Brielle said quickly, scooping up the bills. "I need to catch him and give this back." She ran to the door, but Travis's car was already pulling out of the parking lot. The rain had intensified, and his taillights disappeared into the darkness. When she turned around, Mark was standing right behind her, his hand extended. "I'll take that," he said. "What?" "The money. Tips of that size need to be reported to corporate. There are procedures." "This is my tip," Brielle said, clutching the bills to her chest. "He gave it to me." "And you earned it how, exactly?" "By sitting at his table batting your eyelashes?" The implication made Brielle's stomach turn. "I earned it by being kind to someone who needed kindness, by treating him like a human being instead of a celebrity." "Right," Mark sneered. "Hand it over, Montgomery. I'll make sure it gets processed properly." "No." The word came out stronger than Brielle had intended. She'd never directly defied Mark before, but this money meant Zoe's life. It meant her sister would get her medication, would be safe for another month. Mark's face darkened. "Excuse me?" "I said no. This money is mine, and I'm keeping it." "Like hell you are." Mark stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "You want to keep your job? You'll hand over that cash right now. Otherwise, you can find somewhere else to work." Brielle's heart pounded. She needed this job. She needed all three of her job, but she needed that money more. "I'm going home," he said, backing toward the door. "My shift is over." "You're fired," Mark shouted. "You hear me? Fired. And if you think you're walking out of here with $3,000, you're crazy. I'm calling the police." Brielle ran. She ran through the rain to her car, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the key. Behind her, she could hear Mark shouting into his phone, but she couldn't make out the words over the sound of her own heartbeat. As she drove home through the storm, Brielle tried to process what had just happened. She'd lost her job, the job that provided her health insurance, her most reliable source of income, but she had $3,000 in cash, enough for Zoe's medication and then some. She would figure out the rest later. Right now, her sister was safe, and that was all that mattered. What Brielle didn't know was that Mark Stevens had already made 2 phone calls. The first was to the police, reporting a theft. The second was to his cousin, who worked for a local tabloid newspaper. By morning, the story would be everywhere. NFL star Travis Kelce involved in diner incident with young waitress. And the narrative Mark would spin would be very different from the truth. The storm outside was ending, but for Brielle Montgomery, a much bigger storm was just beginning. Brielle woke up at 6:30 a.m. to her phone buzzing incessantly. Still groggy from only 4 hours of sleep, she reached for it, expecting to see calls from her other jobs, wondering where she was. Instead, her screen showed 17 missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize, 43 text messages, and dozens of social media notifications. Her heart sank as she read the first few messages. "Is it true you slept with Travis Kelce for money? How much did he really pay you? You're disgusting. Gold digger." With trembling fingers, she opened her browser and searched her name. The results made her stomach drop. Chiefs star Travis Kelce pays waitress $3,000 after late-night encounter. Young woman claims innocent conversation led to massive tip. Diner employee fired after suspicious interaction with NFL player. The articles were everywhere. ESPN, TMZ, local news sites, sports blog. Each one painted the same picture. A young, attractive waitress who had somehow convinced Travis Kelce to give her an enormous sum of money during a late-night encounter at a diner. The worst part was the quotes from Mark Stevens, who had clearly been the source for most of the story. She was all over him. Mark told Channel 9 News, sitting at his table, having what looked like a very personal conversation. It was completely inappropriate. When I confronted her about it, she became defensive and ran off with the money. Another article quoted an anonymous source, saying she bragged about knowing how to handle famous customers, said her little sister was a big fan, and she knew exactly what to say to get his attention. Brielle felt sick. None of it was true, but she could see how the story looked from the outside. A young woman working multiple jobs, desperate for money, meeting a wealthy athlete late at night. It was tabloid gold. Her phone rang again. This time it was a number she recognized. Dr. Martinez's office, Zoe's endocrinologist. "Brielle," Dr. Martinez's receptionist said when she answered. "I'm calling because we've had several reporters contact the office asking about Zoe's medical expenses. I want you to know that we haven't confirmed anything, but I thought you should be aware. Reporters are calling about my sister's diabetes? I'm afraid so. They seem to think her medical bills are connected to what happened at the diner last night. Dr. Martinez wants to speak with you as soon as possible about protecting Zoe's privacy." Brielle hung up and immediately called her sister at school. "Zoe, it's me. Are you okay?" "Brielle?" Zoe's voice was confused and hurt. "What's going on? Everyone's staring at me. Madison showed me some article that says you—" She stopped. "It's not true, is it? You didn't really—" "No, baby, of course not. It's all lies. But I need you to come home early today, okay? Don't talk to any reporters if they approach you." "Reporters?" "Brielle, you're scaring me. Everything's going to be fine. I promise. Just come straight home after school." But Brielle wasn't sure everything would be fine. As she got dressed, her phone continued to ring with calls from news outlets wanting her side of the story. She ignored them all. At 8 a.m., there was a knock at her apartment door. Through the peephole, she saw 2 police officers. "Ms. Montgomery, we need to speak with you about an incident at Mel's Diner last night." Brielle opened the door, her heart racing. "Officers, I can explain. We received a report of theft," the older officer said. "Specifically, that you left your workplace with a large sum of money that doesn't belong to you. It was a tip. A customer gave it to me." $3,000? The younger officer raised an eyebrow. "That's quite a tip." "Yes, it is, but it was given to me freely. I have witnesses, the other customers who were there." "Ma'am, We're going to need you to come down to the station to answer some questions. You're not under arrest, but there are some serious allegations being made. As Brielle grabbed her jacket, she noticed news vans pulling into the parking lot of her apartment complex. Cameras were already pointing at her building. "Is there a back exit?" she asked the officers. "Why don't you want to face the camera?" the younger officer asked suspiciously. "Because I'm not guilty of anything, and I don't want my 16-year-old sister to see her guardian being perp-walked on the evening news." The older officer's expression softened slightly. "There's a service entry at the police station." Brielle spent 3 hours answering the same questions over and over again. What was her relationship with Travis Kelce? How long had they known each other? Why did he give her so much money? Had anything inappropriate happened? "I served him dinner," she said for the 10th time. "We talked about my sister's medical expenses. He was being kind. That's it." "Ms. Montgomery," Detective Rodriguez said, "I have to be honest with you. This looks bad. A young woman, working multiple jobs, desperate for money, meets a wealthy celebrity late at night. He gives her a massive tip that happens to be almost exactly the amount you need for your sister's medical bills. You see how that looks, right? It looks like someone was generous to a person in need. Or it looks like payment for services rendered." The implication hit Brielle like a slap. "You think I'm a prostitute? I'm not saying that, but the manager of the diner seems to think something inappropriate occurred. Mark Stevens is a bitter man who's angry that he doesn't have control over my tips. He's been harassing female employees for years. Do you have proof of that?" Brielle thought of all the times Mark had made inappropriate comments, touched her shoulder a little too long, made her feel uncomfortable. But she'd never reported it because she needed the job. "Other employees will confirm it," she said. "We've already spoken to several employees. None of them corroborated your story about harassment. In fact, they all described you as someone who was always looking for ways to make extra money." Brielle's heart sank. Of course they wouldn't support her. They were all afraid of losing their jobs, just like she had been. After what felt like hours, Detective Rodriguez finally said, "Ms. Montgomery, we're not charging you with anything at this time, but I strongly suggest you return the money to avoid further complications." "Return it to who?" "Travis Kelce gave it to me freely." "Return it to the diner. Let them sort it out with Mr. Kelce." "Absolutely not. That money is for my sister's medication." Becky, as Brielle left the police station, she was met by a wall of cameras and reporters shouting questions. "Brielle, did you sleep with Travis Kelce? How long have you been working as an escort? What did you do to earn $3,000? She pushed through the crowd without saying a word, but she could feel the cameras following her every movement. By evening, footage of her leaving the police station would be on every sports news show in the country. When she finally made it home, Zoe was waiting for tears streaming down her face. "Everyone at school saw the news," Zoe said. "They're saying horrible things about you, about us." Brielle pulled her sister into a hug. "It's going to be okay. It's all lies, and the truth will come out." But as she held Zoe, Brielle wasn't sure she believed her own word. The story had taken on a life of its own, and she was just a working-class waitress against the entire media machine. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the news. So sorry this is happening to you. The truth will come out. T. Travis." At least someone believed her, but one person's belief wasn't enough to stop the avalanche that was already destroying her life. And she still had no idea that the worst was yet to come. 3 days after the story broke, Brielle's life had completely fallen apart. She'd been fired from her grocery store job after the manager said her notoriety was causing disruptions among customers who recognized her. The pharmacy had put her on indefinite suspension pending investigation into her character. In 72 hours, she'd gone from working 80 hours a week to being unemployed entirely. Worse, the medical bills were piling up. Dr. Martinez had called that morning to inform her that Zoe's insurance had flagged her account for suspicious activity after the media attention. They were demanding additional documentation and threatening to suspend coverage pending a review. "What kind of suspicious activity?" Brielle had asked. "Apparently, they're concerned about the source of your recent payment. They want to verify that the money you used for Zoe's medication last month came from legitimate sources." It was a cruel irony. The money Travis had given her, the money meant to help Zoe, was now being used against them by the insurance company. Brielle sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by bills and legal documents. She'd received a formal letter from Mel's Diner's corporate headquarters demanding the return of the $3,000, claiming it was improperly obtained. Mark Stevens had also filed a civil lawsuit against her for theft of company property. Her phone had been ringing non-stop with reporters wanting interviews, but also with lawyers offering to represent her for a percentage of any settlement they might win against Travis Kelce or the Kansas City Chief. They all seemed to assume she was planning to sue someone. The worst call had come that morning from Child Protective Service. "Ms. Montgomery, we've received several reports expressing concern about your ability to provide a stable environment for your sister," the social worker had said. "Given your recent unemployment and the allegations in the media, we need to conduct a home visit to assess the situation." Allegations? I haven't been charged with anything. I understand that. But we have to investigate any reports of questionable judgment or potential endangerment. Endangerment? I worked 3 jobs to keep my sister alive. Worked, the social worker corrected gently. "According to our information, you're currently unemployed." The appointment was set for Friday. If CPS decided that Brielle wasn't providing adequate care, they could remove Zoe from her custody. The thought made Brielle physically ill. At 3:30 p.m., Zoe came home from school with red eyes and a split lip. "What happened?" Brielle asked, immediately going into protective mode. "Some kids at school," Zoe mumbled. "They were saying things about you, about us. I told them to stop, and Jake Morrison said you were a whore who sold yourself to football players, so I hit him." "Zoe, I don't care if I get suspended. No one talks about my sister like that." Brielle pulled Zoe into a hug, fighting back tears. Her 16-year-old sister was defending her honor with her fist, while Brielle felt powerless to defend either of them. "Baby, you can't get into fights, especially not now." "Why not now?" Brielle hesitated. She hadn't told Zoe about the CPS visit yet. "Because we need to be careful. People are watching us, waiting for us to make mistakes." That evening, as they ate dinner in front of the TV, Zoe suddenly pointed at the screen. "Turn it up." The local news was running another story about the Travis Kelce diner incident, but this time they had a new angle. A woman Brielle didn't recognize was being interviewed outside Mel's Diner. "I worked with Brielle for 2 years," the woman said. "And I can tell you, she was always looking for ways to make extra money. She talked about wanting to meet rich men, celebrity. She even said once that if she ever served someone famous, she'd make sure to get something out of it." Brielle stared at the screen in shock. "I've never seen that woman before in my life." "Sarah Jenkins has worked at Mel's Diner for 3 years," the reporter continued. "She says Ms. Montgomery often talked about using her looks to get better tips from male customers." "This is insane," Brielle whispered. "They're just making people up now." Her phone rang. It was a number she recognized, Travis Kelce's agent, whom she'd spoken with the day before. "Brielle, it's David Chen. I'm calling because Travis wants to help, but his legal team is advising against any direct contact right now." "I understand. However, he's asked me to reach out to you unofficially. He wants you to know that he's prepared to make a public statement supporting your version of events." Brielle felt a flicker of hope. "Really? There's just one problem. His team is concerned that any statement he makes will only add fuel to the fire. The story will get bigger, more invasive. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny?" Brielle thought about Zoe, about the CPS visit, about their lives being torn apart on national television. It can't get much worse than it already is. Actually, it can, much worse. If Travis goes public, this becomes a bigger story, more media attention, more invasive coverage. They'll dig into every aspect of your life, your family's life. Your sister's medical records could become public. The thought of Zoe's private medical information being splashed across tabloids made Brielle sick. "What are my other options?" "Legally, you're in a difficult position. You haven't been charged with anything, but the civil lawsuit from the diner could drag on for months. Your best bet might be to quietly return the money and try to move on." "I can't return the money. I already used it for my sister's medication." There was a long pause. "I see. That does complicate things." After David hung up, Brielle sat in her living room, feeling more alone than she had since her parents died. Outside, she could see a news van parked across the street, waiting for something newsworthy to happen. At 9 p.m., her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email." Brielle opened her laptop and found a message from a Gmail account she didn't recognize. Brielle, I can't stop thinking about how wrong this has all gone. I gave you that money because you needed it, and now people are destroying your life over it. This isn't just. I'm going to fix this, regardless of what my team says. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling a press conference. The truth needs to come out. Travis. Attached to the email was a video file. When Brielle opened it, she saw Travis sitting in what looked like his home office, speaking directly to the camera. If you're watching, something has happened to prevent me from going public myself, he said. But I wanted to make sure someone had my real account of what happened that night at Mel's Diner. The video was Travis's insurance policy, his version of events, recorded in case something prevented him from speaking publicly. As Brielle watched Travis explain what had really happened that night, she felt a surge of hope. Maybe the truth would come out after all. Maybe there was still a chance to save her reputation, her job prospects, her custody of Zoe. But at 11:17 p.m., that hope was shattered by a breaking news alert on her phone. Travis Kelce hospitalized after car accident on I-70, condition unknown. Brielle stared at the notification, her heart stopping. The one person who could clear her name, who knew the truth about that night, was now fighting for his life in a hospital bed, and she completely alone. Travis Kelce's accident dominated the news cycle for 48 hours. His car had hydroplaned during a thunderstorm and crashed into a concrete barrier on I-70. He was rushed to University of Kansas Hospital with serious injury, and for the first day, his condition was listed as critical. Brielle found herself more worried about a man she'd met once than about her own crumbling life. She refreshed news sites obsessively, waiting for updates. The irony wasn't lost on her. The person she was most concerned about was also the only person who could save her from complete ruin. On Thursday morning, Travis was upgraded to stable condition. The Chiefs organization released a statement saying he had suffered a concussion and several broken ribs, but was expected to make a full recovery. However, doctors said he would need several days of rest before handling any stressful situation, including media interviews. That same morning, Brielle received the dreaded call. Ms. Montgomery, this is Rebecca Walsh from Child Protective Service. We've moved up our home visit to this afternoon at 2 p.m. This afternoon? I thought we agreed on Friday. New information has come to light that requires immediate assessment. Please make sure you and Zoe are both present. Brielle spent the morning frantically cleaning their apartment, organizing Zoe's medical records, and preparing for what felt like the most important interview of her life. If CPS decided she was an unfit guardian, they could remove Zoe immediately. At 1:45 p.m., there was a knock at the door. Brielle expected the social worker, but instead found a woman in an expensive suit she didn't recognize. Ms. Montgomery, I'm Angela Rodriguez. I'm an attorney. I believe we need to talk before your CPS appointment. I can't afford a lawyer. You're not paying me. May I come in? Confused but desperate, Brielle let her in. Angela Rodriguez was sharp, professional, and seemed to know more about Brielle's situation than Brielle did. Ms. Montgomery, I represent Travis Kelce in certain legal matters. Yesterday, before his accident, he contacted my firm with specific instructions regarding your situation. Brielle's heart leaped. He's going to help? He's already helping. We've been investigating the claims made against you, and we've uncovered some very interesting information. Angela opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. First, the woman who claimed to be your co-worker on the news, Sarah Jenkins. She's never worked at Mel's Diner. In fact, she doesn't exist. The person interviewed was an actress, hired by a local tabloid to create a more sensational story. Brielle stared at the document. They hired someone to lie about me. It gets worse. Mark Stevens, your former manager, has been in financial trouble. His gambling debts total over $30,000. He was paid $5,000 by the same tabloid for his exclusive interview. He sold me out for money? And he's been skimming from employee tips for months. We have bank records showing deposits that don't match his reported income. Brielle felt vindication and rage. So, I was telling the truth. Yes, but that's not all. Angela pulled out another set of documents. The CPS report against you? It was filed by someone using a fake name. We traced the call to Mark Stevens' personal cell phone. He called CPS on me? He wanted to pressure you into returning the money. If you lost custody of Zoe, you'd be desperate enough to give him whatever he wanted. Before Brielle could respond, there was another knock. This time it was Rebecca Walsh from CPS, arriving with a police officer. Ms. Montgomery, we're here to conduct the welfare check and interview Zoe. Angela stepped forward. Ms. Walsh, I'm attorney Angela Rodriguez. Before you proceed, there are some developments in this case you need to be aware of. Angela quickly explained what they had discovered about Mark Stevens and the false accusation. She provided documentation of the fake news interview, the financial irregularities, and the fraudulent CPS report. Ms. Walsh reviewed the documents with growing amazement. This is highly unusual. We'll need to verify this information, but if it's accurate, this completely changes the nature of our investigation. It's all verifiable, Angela assured her. In fact, we've already provided copies to the Kansas City Police Department. Mark Stevens is being arrested as we speak. As if on cue, Brielle's phone buzzed with a news alert. Diner manager arrested for fraud in Travis Kelce case. Ms. Walsh made several phone calls, consulted with her supervisor, and ultimately decided to postpone the home visit pending a full investigation into the false report. After she left, Brielle turned to Angela with tears in her eyes. How can I ever thank you? Thank Travis? Actually, there's more, Angela said with a smile. Travis recorded a video statement before his accident. With his permission, we're releasing it to the media today. That evening, Brielle and Zoe sat together watching as Travis's video played on every major news network. In it, he calmly and clearly explained exactly what had happened that night at Mel's Diner. He talked about Brielle's professionalism, her dedication to her sister, and his decision to help a family in need. The American healthcare system fails families like Brielle's every day, Travis said in the video. I had the privilege of being able to help one family, and I'm disgusted that my gesture of kindness has been twisted into something ugly by people seeking to profit from lies. He looked directly into the camera. Brielle Montgomery is one of the most hardworking, selfless people I've ever met. She deserves our respect, not our judgment. And anyone who has attacked her or her sister should be ashamed of themselves. Within hours, the narrative completely flipped. Justice for Brielle began trending on social media. People shared stories of their own struggles with medical bills and praised Travis for standing up for working families. Mark Stevens' arrest made national news, with details emerging about his fraud scheme and history of workplace harassment. The tabloid that had paid for false stories issued a public apology and retraction. By Friday morning, Brielle had received calls from all three of her former employers, offering her jobs back with apology and back pay. The pharmacy even offered her a promotion to assistant manager. But the most important call came from Dr. Martinez's office. Brielle, wonderful news, the receptionist said. Your insurance company has not only reinstated Zoe's coverage, but they've also agreed to cover her continuous glucose monitor at 100% for the next year, as compensation for the stress they caused. That afternoon, Brielle received an unexpected visit. Travis Kelce stood at her door, his arm in a sling but smiling widely. I hope it's okay that I stopped by, he said. I wanted to check on you and Zoe in person. Travis, you should be resting. How did you even get my address? My lawyer, he grinned. And I couldn't rest knowing you two were going through hell because of me. Zoe appeared behind Brielle, her eyes wide with excitement. Oh my God, you're really here. You must be Zoe, Travis said. I've heard so much about you. Your sister talks about you constantly. As they sat in the living room, Travis explained his larger plan. Brielle, what happened to you happens to thousands of families every month. People choosing between rent and insulin, between food and medication. It's not right. He pulled out a tablet and showed them a presentation. I'm starting a foundation, the Kelce Family Medical Assistance Fund. It will provide emergency financial aid to families struggling with medical expenses, particularly chronic conditions like diabetes. Brielle stared at the screen. Travis, this is incredible, and I want you to help me run it, he continued. You understand these struggles firsthand. You know what families need, how the system fails. I can provide the funding and publicity, but I need someone who's lived this reality to make sure we're actually helping. You want to offer me a job? I want to offer you a career, a chance to turn what you've been through into something that helps thousands of other families. Brielle looked at Zoe, who was nodding enthusiastically. What about my other job? This would be full-time, with benefits that include comprehensive medical coverage for you and Zoe, plus a salary that would let you focus on this work instead of juggling multiple jobs. tears filled Brielle's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes, Zoe. Say yes so you can help other families like ours." 1 year after the incident that nearly destroyed her life, Brielle Montgomery stood before the House Subcommittee on Health in Washington, D.C., preparing to testify about healthcare accessibility in America. "Honorable committee member," she began. "A year ago, I was a waitress, working 3 jobs just to keep my sister alive. Today, I'm here representing the Kelce Family Medical Assistance Fund, which has helped over 3,000 families facing medical crisis." In the gallery, Travis Kelce sat with Zoe, both beaming with pride. Beside them sat Angela Rodriguez, who had become their legal counsel and close friend, and Dr. Martinez, who now served on the Foundation's Medical Advisory Board. The transformation had been remarkable. What started as Travis's spontaneous act of kindness had grown into a movement that was changing lives across America. The Foundation had distributed $8 million in emergency aid, provided insulin to 1-200 diabetics, and funded critical treatments for children with chronic illnesses in all 50 states. The American healthcare system forces families to make impossible choices, Brielle continued in her testimony. "We've met parents who ration their children's insulin, who choose between medication and rent, who declare bankruptcy trying to keep their loved ones alive." She clicked to her first slide, showing a map covered in red dots. Each dot represents a family has contacted our foundation for help. The demand is overwhelming and growing every month. Representative Sarah Williams from California leaned forward. "Ms. Montgomery, what specific policy changes would you recommend?" "Emergency medical assistance at the federal level," Brielle replied without hesitation. "The Medical Emergency Relief Act would provide families with temporary financial support during medical crises, preventing them from falling into permanent poverty due to circumstances beyond their control." After her testimony, Brielle joined Travis for lunch near the Capitol. It had become their tradition after Foundation events, a chance to reflect on their work and plan for the future. "You were incredible up there," Travis said. "A year ago, you were afraid to speak up to your manager. Now you're testifying before Congress." "A year ago, I was just trying to survive," Brielle replied. "Now I understand that survival isn't enough. We have to help others thrive." Their partnership had evolved beyond the Foundation. Travis had become family to both Brielle and Zoe. He attended Zoe's school events, helped with college applications, and celebrated when she was accepted to pre-med programs at 3 universities. Speaking of Zoe, Travis said, "Did she decide on Kansas or Northwestern?" "Kansas," Brielle smiled. "She wants to stay close to home and work with the Foundation during school break. She's already talking about research projects on diabetes management in underserved communities." Zoe had chosen medicine inspired by her own experiences and the Foundation's work. At 17, she was already speaking at medical conferences about the patient perspective on chronic illness management. "She's going to change the world," Travis said. "She already has," Brielle replied. "She just doesn't know it yet." 3 months later, Brielle received the call that would represent the culmination of everything they'd worked for. The Medical Emergency Relief Act had passed both houses of Congress and was heading to the president's desk. "We did it," she told Travis over the phone. "We actually changed federal policy." "You did it," Travis corrected her. "I just provided the platform. You're the one who understood what families needed, who could speak with authority about healthcare struggle." The bill signing ceremony took place in the Rose Garden. Brielle stood behind the president as he signed legislation that would provide federal emergency assistance to families facing catastrophic medical expense. In the audience, Zoe sat with her college friend, all volunteers for the Foundation. Next to them, Dr. Martinez represented the medical community that had rallied behind their cause. And in the back, employees from Mel's Diner who had supported Brielle from the beginning, the ones who had helped establish the truth about what really happened stormy night. "Sometimes," Brielle said in her remarks after the signing, "the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing you'll ever do. I'm grateful for every struggle that led us here, because it taught me that even the smallest act of kindness can change the world." The new legislation would help millions of families avoid the impossible choices Brielle once faced. Children wouldn't have to watch their parents choose between medication and meals. Families wouldn't lose their homes because of medical emergency. As the ceremony ended, Travis found Brielle standing alone by the Rose Garden, looking thoughtful. Any regrets? He asked. Brielle smiled, thinking of all the families who would be helped by the new legislation. Only one. What's that? I wish my parents could have seen this. They would have been proud to know that everything we went through led to something that helps so many other families. Travis put his arm around her shoulders in a brotherly gesture. I think they can see it. And I think they're proud of both of you. As they walked back toward the White House, Brielle's phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. Watching on the news, you're my hero, and I can't wait to be a doctor, so I can help families the way you do. That evening, at the Foundation's celebration dinner, Travis stood to make a toast. A year and a half ago, I stopped at a diner during a storm, he said. To the gathering of staff, volunteers, and beneficiaries, I thought I was just helping one family. I had no idea I was about to meet someone who would teach me what real leadership looks like. He raised his glass toward Brielle. You turned personal tragedy into purpose, individual struggle into systemic change. You proved that sometimes the most powerful transformation comes from the simplest act of human compassion. The room erupted in applause. In that moment, surrounded by families whose lives had been changed by their work, Brielle understood something profound. Her journey from struggling waitress to national advocate hadn't been about overcoming adversity. It had been about transforming that adversity into hope for others. Later that night, as she tucked a photo from the bill signing into Zoe's college acceptance letter, Brielle reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them. It all started with a kind gesture from a stranger on a stormy night, a moment of human connection that had grown into a movement changing thousands of lives across America. And the best part was, this was just the beginning. Zoe would become a doctor, would help families facing medical crises, would inspire others to find their own ways to make a difference. The cycle of compassion would continue, spreading far beyond what any of them could imagine. Sometimes the most extraordinary change begins with the most ordinary moment. A waitress serving coffee to a customer who chose to see her humanity instead of her circumstance. In the end, that was all it took to change the world.